Fadl ibn Umar is admiring all of the pilgrims as they're circumambulating the Kaaba. And Imam Sadiq wipes over his eyes. It is there where he sees the reality of those pilgrims. He sees them as apes and bears and all kinds of creatures that are walking around, and he's shocked and he's terrified. And Imam Sadiq alayhi salam tells him that, most of the human race, are but animals. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد أمتنا وسلم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear sister Tiffany.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Father.
Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
So today we want to talk about reincarnation. Okay, but a different aspect of it.
All right.
Okay, so we spoke in previous episodes about the existence of this idea of reincarnation.
Yes.
And how reincarnation literally means that a person is incarnated again in this world. Mm-hmm. He comes again to this world. He appears or is born in a new human body. He has a new life cycle, a new experience as a human after having lived one and died as one.
Yes.
We find this idea of reincarnation present in a lot of the Eastern religions and philosophies, including Hinduism and Buddhism.
Yes.
Yeah? Mm-hmm. And we have the idea of karma, which is strongly associated with reincarnation. And it's basically this idea that whatever it is that you do, how you treat people, the things that you decide to invest in life will affect your future, incarnation.
Yeah.
If you are mean to people or you are cheating people, in one particular incarnation, it will come back to you in the form of people, taking revenge from you or cheating you in a future reincarnation.
Yes.
And in that way, the balance is set and restored, and everybody takes the right from the other person.
Yeah.
In Islam and in Judaism and in Christianity, the idea of reincarnation is strongly present.
Yes.
Although most of the mainstream followers of these religions are oblivious to this fact and deny it. They don't think that it is part of the religion, but for those who read the scripture and are familiar with it, they know for a fact that it exists and that the people in those times, they believed in it.
Yes.
And that's why the Jews at the time of Jesus Christ, and we mentioned this before, they thought that Jesus was the second coming of, or the reincarnation of Jeremiah or Elijah or one of the prophets.
Yes.
Yeah?
Exactly.
If they didn't believe in reincarnation, then they wouldn't have, asked that question.
Yeah, of course.
But they did.
Yeah.
And we spoke about how there's this concept also of the transmigration of the soul and how that is, also it shares in reincarnation the idea of a soul transferring from one body to another, but it's counted as like kind of the same incarnation rather than a new incarnation.
Right, yeah.
In Islam, you have many narrations. There's just so many of them. In Shia Islam in particular, but also in Sunni Islam. And there's many, many verses in the Quran which indicate that reincarnation is real.
Yeah.
You have though different aspects of reincarnation, and they are divided based on what vessel it is that you are incarnating into. So in Buddhism, Hinduism, a person doesn't have to necessarily incarnate into a human form. He can also incarnate as an animal.
Yes.
This concept exists also in Islam. A person can reincarnate as a human being, and this is called naskh. Naskh means to copy, right?
Yes.
Or a copy. So the tanasukh of al-arwah is the copying of it translates to, the copying of souls, right? And that is the return of a soul into a new body. And sometimes the new body will resemble the old body, and it's called the copying of souls because people noticed a similarity between the soul of one person and the soul of like his grandfather or somebody that's before. So they're like, he's a copy of that soul, and in actuality, it's the reincarnation of that soul.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So then so that's nasakh. And then you have in Islam, masakh. All right. So nasakh starts with an N. All right. Masakh starts with an M. Okay. M as in man.
Yeah.
And masakh is the reincarnation of a human being as an animal.
Okay.
And in Islam, it is considered to be a form of punishment. It is not something that you want to go through.
Yeah.
This is only something that happens to you if God is angry with you, if you have too much bad karma, if you've lived a really bad life, if you are not worthy of incarnating anymore as a human being.
Okay.
And usually you will incarnate as an animal because your deeds and your life as having been lived as a human being no longer requires you to have the body of a human being to fulfill those things that you are interested in fulfilling.
Okay.
So, for example, if you have a person who's just a mass murderer, he just wants to murder all the time. Or you have a person who just wants to eat all the time. Well, you don't need a human body to fulfill that. Human bodies were meant for spiritual elevation. So if you're not going to use your body for spiritual elevation and you're just going to use it for the purpose of fulfilling worldly pleasures or bodily pleasures, well, you can do that. God believes that you can do that with a different type of body.
Yeah.
A different type of body actually might be more adequate for you in order that you may achieve your goals. But, because clearly you're not interested in the intellect, you're not interested in the spirit. And so you're only interested in lowly desires and things of this nature. So you could do that you can eat as much as you want, for example, in the body of a pig, right? Or you can kill as much as you want in the body of a lion, etc.
Right. Okay. So it all goes back to your actions. And
exactly. Yeah. And even you have in the Bhagavad Gita, in one of the versions of it, you have these images that are in the middle of the book, whereby you see these pictures that are next to each other. And, it shows like a human being and he's behaving in a certain way. And then next to it is the image of the animal that he incarnates into. And you will see that even in Hinduism, they recognize that, how you are, how your nature is, what it is that you're interested in investing your life. And let's bring that on the screen now. How it is that you choose to, live your life will affect where it is that you shall go. People that behave like animals return as animals.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
And if you notice, one of the images here is the image of a woman who's posing, and next to it is a tree. All right. And the idea is that she reincarnates in this tree. And also this concept is present in Islam, and it is called fasakh with an F. Okay. So you have nasakh, masakh, fasakh.
Okay.
Nasakh as a human, masakh as an animal, and fasakh as a plant. You come back as a tree, you come back as grass, you come back as a flower, you come back as some sort of plant. Okay.
Okay.
And this also is based on your deeds. And then you have raskh. Okay, with an R. Now, raskh is the reincarnation of a human being into a rock. Okay, or some sort of inanimate object. Okay?
Yeah.
And the proof for that in the Quran is the verse from the Quran where it says, be stone or be iron. There's a verse that says, be stone or be iron. And so this is God basically confirming the idea that a human being can become a stone or an iron.
Okay.
You have in the Quran many verses that are indicative of the fact that a person can return as an animal.
Yeah.
You have verses in the Quran which state that God had made the Jews that basically transgressed against the Sabbath come back in the form of apes. Yeah. You have verses in the Quran that basically say that there is no creature that walks on the earth except that they were nations like you. And every nation has an imam, and there are no imams for the animals. And so what that means is that all of the creatures, the animals that exist on the planet, there were human beings before that ended up becoming these animals afterwards.
Wow. Wow.
There's verses of the Quran which the Ahl-Bayt السلام have described as pertaining to maskh. For example, the verse in the Quran where it says, it is as if they are being driven to their death while they look. And this is, the Ahl-Bayt السلام said it's about the cattle as they're being driven towards the slaughterhouse as they're looking on. And this is about the disbeliever who becomes a cattle in the form of maskh, and they're being driven forward to die, basically, in response to or in exchange for the evil deeds that they did while they are alive.
Wow. And it's a very it's justice, when you think about it, because as we said before, it all goes back to the actions of the people and what they choose to do and what they desire to do. That ultimately leads to the path that their soul takes. And I think it's really interesting that these scriptures talk about it. They talk about the concept in several places. So although people are unaware of it, it is absolutely the reality.
Yeah, and we have narrations from the Ahl Bayt where the Imams, peace be upon them, specifically pointed out types of animals, and they spoke about how who were these types of animals, or who are the types of people that incarnate into these specific animals.
Okay.
Yeah, and to give you a few examples, we have the elephant, and the elephant it was a king who was a fornicator, and he wouldn't leave anything dry nor wet except that he fornicated with it, right?
Okay.
And so his punishment is that he ends up coming back as an elephant. It is said about the bear that the bear was a homosexual man who was a fornicator and used to call people to himself. And so this ends up being his punishment.
Okay.
There are narrations that state that the unfaithful wife comes back in the form of a rabbit. Yeah. And that even, that's the reason why when you slaughter a rabbit, they kind of make this horrific, female screaming type of noise.
Wow.
Other narrations state that the rabbit is a woman that never used to clean herself after her period. You have narrations that state that the lizard or the iguana was an Arab murderer who used to hide on the road and just like murder people and didn't care about who it is that he was killing. So he comes back in that form.
Okay.
You have narrations that talk about the crab, and that a crab, because it only walks like sideways instead of walking forward. It can either only walk to the left or only walk to the right. And so the narrations state that this is a man who was married to more than one wife, and he was unequal between them. He was not just. He didn't treat both of them the same. So now he's condemned to walking this way or walking that way.
Wow.
You have the mosquito, who was this is a person who used to mock the prophets and the messengers. And there's a story that states that in particular the mosquito used to it was the first time that it happened. It was a man who was standing in front of Jesus and mocking him, and then he ended up becoming a mosquito.
Okay.
Apes are Jews who transgressed against the Sabbath. They used to pull little tricks in order that they, get around the rules of not working on the Sabbath. And in particular, one narration mentions that they were commanded not to do any work. So then they went out on Friday night and they set their nets. Yeah. Okay. So that all day Saturday, the fish would travel and get caught in their fishing nets. And then on Saturday night / Sunday morning, they would take out their nets and eat all of the food and sell all of the food that they were not supposed to gather on Saturday. But then they're using a technicality that, hey, we weren't working, we just set the nets out. So what shall we do?
Okay, that's very fascinating. These are the most close to human beings, but their consciousness is just not quite there. So.
Exactly. And then you have the pigs, and the pigs, the narration state, are a group of Christians. And the reason why they turn into pigs, is the narration states, is because they were begging Jesus Christ to bring down the Last Supper. They bring down the table from the widespread table from heaven, and that after he brought it down, they were the most people that were against him and hated him. So they ask for this food, this manna from the heavens. And then when Jesus reveals the manna from the heavens, they became extremely, extreme disbelievers in him. And so they were, made into swine.
Yes. Okay.
There's narration that state that the catfish are basically that it's a man that would call people to have sex with his wife. So swingers, people of this nature, they ended up, turning into catfish. You have other narrations that state also that they were a people from the Israelites. You have narrations that state that witches, women that practice magic, that they end up coming back as spiders. Other narrations state that they are, women that used to disobey their husbands and cause them a lot of problems and use the force of other men against them, Okay. So like maybe they would seek the help of neighbors or the help of their fathers or their brothers unjustly against their own spouses, and so that's their punishment in the end, is that they ended up coming back as that. You have the bat. The bat is a thief who would steal from people, especially dates. You have. And some narrations state that they used to steal. There were people that used to steal from the people that are making pilgrimage around the Kaaba. Other narrations also state that foxes, or wolves are people that were swingers as well, that used to call people to their wives. And then you have the peacock, and the peacock was a man who was a disbelieving man that was extremely handsome and beautiful, and he would continue to seduce a believing man's wife until he falls upon her. In his next incarnation, he ends up coming back in the form of a peacock, which is something beautiful to look at, but it has, its eggs are not eaten and not touched.
Okay. Wow.
You have narrations about about Nebuchadnezzar, and how Nebuchadnezzar was turned into Masq, and he ended up incarnating into the form of a lion. So you have this idea that lions are also kings that were a little bit tyrannical.
Yes.
And killed lots of people, and then so they come back in that form, and the lion is the king of the jungle. Yeah. And so those are just merely a few examples from the narrations of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam about how and why somebody would come into the form of an animal because of these types of deeds.
Yeah, there's so many. There's just so many, and the stories of how the actions directly correspond to the condition that you end up in is really interesting.
Yeah, it really is interesting. And the Imam alayhi salam, he said that if you want to, so the Imam clarifies that basically a couple things. That he clarifies that not all animals are necessarily people that are being, that are coming back into a human form. All right?
Okay.
And that's part of the reason why we eat meat, though. Okay? Because it is, and why the reason why we can't eat other meat. So in Al-Hafd Sharif and in some of the other narrations of the Ahlul Bayt, it is permissible for every nation to eat from the meat that is of the sins of its own nation.
Okay.
So what that means is that you have a different nation, for example, the Israelites who were on the fourth covenant with Moses. All those Israelites that turned into apes, now it's not permissible for us to eat from them because that was a different nation, and that nation, they basically eliminate each other's karma with each other.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that those that were basically from the Christian nation, they're dealing with their own karma, and that the Muslim nation must eat from those people that became incarnated in animals that are halal or permissible to eat for them.
Okay.
Why? Because it is basically a karma that's playing out.
Yeah. So it plays a role in the whole karmic system.
Yeah. Imam Ali alayhi salam, in one narration, he says, basically he says not to make your bellies a graveyard for animals. So don't eat too much meat.
Yes.
And in another narration, he was talking about people that are eating birds or meat or things like this. And he says, how many times do I see somebody eating their aunt or their uncle or their father or their mother or, their brother or their sister or their former friend?
It's very disturbing.
Yeah. So it would be like somebody who hurt you in one incarnation and did something really bad to you. And in order that sin that's between you and him, because God is just,
yes,
there are two types of justices, two types of rights that must be protected, right? Mm-hmm. So anybody who commits a sin, he's sinning against God, but he's also sinning against, either himself or another human being.
Yeah.
So all sins that are against God, God can forgive those.
Okay, like between you and God.
Anything between you and God, that's the idea. God can forgive.
Okay.
Any sins that a person commits against his own self, well, that's for himself to forgive.
Right.
Okay? And I'll give examples of what I mean. And any sin that is against another human being, either the human being has to forgive you or the karma has to play out.
Okay. But it has to be resolved somehow.
It has to be resolved somehow. And for that reason, the Quran talks about a lesser punishment and a greater punishment.
Yes.
And the greater punishment is thought to be heaven, and hell, basically. The punishment being hell, the reward being heaven. Yes. Okay? Yeah. That's the greater judgment. That's the greater punishment and the greater reward.
Yeah.
So those people whom after all of their incarnations, because everybody after a certain amount of incarnations, they have to stand in front of God and be judged. All of those people are being judged only at that point for the sins that are between them and God. Okay. And the deeds that they did for the sake of God, the good deeds that they did, they're getting reward for it. The sins against God, they're being punished for.
Okay.
What is between them and God is what's being judged.
Okay, so everything else has to be
everything else has already been cleared beforehand.
Okay.
Before you get to God, what's between you and other people and you and yourself must be cleared.
Okay.
And that's why people incarnate many times over and over again, so that everybody has an equal opportunity, that you don't have this problem where somebody, is born into this world poor and uneducated and has to struggle in life to reach the same spiritual enlightenment that another person who's born with a golden spoon in his mouth and privileged, and educated, so it's not fair. They don't have, right? Yes. And this is one of the criticisms of religion and of God, right? By the atheists that how can these people be judged the same? Well, reincarnation solves that.
Yes,
because the person who comes once as rich, he'll come as poor, and the person as poor will come as rich. And really each person, depending on their deeds, that will affect how good of a position they're born into. So nobody is oppressed in regards to that.
Yeah, I'm just hearing the description of the reality. It's just God's justice is so awesome. Right? God is extremely just, and it really goes back to you and what you've done, and you have so many opportunities to correct your mistakes.
Exactly. And the karmic cycle will play out by people stepping on or killing the person who killed them or who hurt them. So let's say you were murdered, God's not going to make you take revenge against your murderer by turning you into a murderer in the next incarnation.
Yes.
Right? Because murder is bad.
Yes.
So how is it that you can take vengeance? Well, you would take vengeance by your enemy coming in the form of a mosquito, or coming in the form of an ant, or coming in the form of a lizard, or coming in the form of a sheep or a goat, or something that you end up slaughtering or stepping on or killing.
Yes, okay,
right?
Yes.
Without feeling bad about it and without being counted, having been counted as a murder.
Wow.
And sometimes also that ends up playing out by the person being enlisted in the army and killing the enemy on the other side. How many times, is it that a person kills somebody in battle, but it was actually somebody who had killed them beforehand?
Wow, that's amazing to think about. Wow.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
And, and also this is the reason why there are a lot of whenever there's an animal attack on a human being, these are also the reasons why that happens, is because that the soul that is in the animal that is attacking the human being, it belongs to somebody who has some sort of karmic, thing that needs to play out, right?
Okay.
So you could still, you be a better person than somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
You could be a human being who's a believer and somebody else is a non-believer, and they go into this, one of these animal forms, but still it's possible that a believer oppresses a non-believer.
Oh my God.
Right? And so if you oppress a non-believer, you did an injustice to them, they still have the right to take their justice, or their rights back from that believer, and they do so in the form of an attack, for example, Or sometimes it might be that a woman is married to a man and he passes away, and she ends up marrying somebody else, and that old husband of hers incarnates in the form of a dog, and he ends up seeing his wife now, and she's walking with another man, and he freaks out, and he goes over there and he attacks the man.
Wow.
This attack is not out of nowhere. It is, an act of jealousy or something of the sort.
Wow. Wow.
And an interesting fact to note is that, human beings, when they go from one human body to another, they lose all of their memories.
Yes.
It has to restart again. But when they go into animal form, they retain their memories from their previous incarnations, because it's a punishment, and it wouldn't be a punishment if they didn't remember that they used to be human beings, and they didn't remember, their previous lives.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
part of the punishment is that the soul that's in there remembers.
So you see an animal walking around and it's fully aware that it used to be a human being. And
Fully aware, but incapable of expressing that awareness.
That's like imprisonment.
It is imprisonment.
Yeah.
Now, there are much more animal and insect bodies and bird bodies and fish that exist on the earth. Then there are souls that need to be placed inside of these vessels. So so every species of animals has in there, members that have souls of human beings that are being punished in there, but not no entire species. All of them, are people that are being punished.
Okay.
So not all chicken are reincarnated humans, but some chicken are. Not all dogs are reincarnated human, but some dogs have the souls of human beings, and etc.
Okay.
One of the ways that you can tell if an animal has a human soul or not is how they have intercourse. Sometimes you'll come across videos of people that have been weirded out by filming their pets behaving in a way sexually with one another that only human beings behave. Okay. And or act like, or perhaps they have certain types of behaviors, the way that they walk, or the way that they're hopping or standing or behaving. It is resembling human behavior more than animal behavior. It's too weird.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
It's this mix of like human consciousness and animal body alarming.
That would be a sign that pet or that animal body is inhabited by a human being.
Okay.
Okay.
It's fascinating.
Yes, it is. And so, and a person who goes into these animal incarnations, they won't just go into one. It just becomes like the first of many cycles of incarnations as animals.
Okay.
So you don't want to get stuck into the animal incarnation cycle, because you might have to go through 1,000 animals before you're able to come out free again.
Okay.
So depending on how many sins you have, and how long it takes a person, who ends up becoming an animal to learn to elevate back into, and come back around to incarnate as a human being, it might take a long time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like a long prison sentence.
It is a long prison sentence, and you really need like good deeds to break free from that. Okay. And even animals can have good deeds, and there are many animals that the narrations have stated are going to end up going into paradise, and no animals go into paradise, only humans do. And for that reason, these animals would have incarnated in human form before reaching in the end, to paradise or,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. And one example of that is Wahshi, the warrior who murdered the uncle of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi Hamza, son of Abd al-Muttalib. This guy, even though he embraced Islam, the karma had to play out.
Okay.
And he had to pay for all of the murders that he did, and most importantly, for the pain that he caused the Prophet Muhammad by murdering, his uncle and consuming his body parts.
Okay.
And so what had to happen? He incarnated into animal form, and continued to incarnate into animal form. And that's a scary one, because it shows that even if you, believe in the true path or the true religion, the karmic debt has to be paid off. And so he incarnated animal into animal into animal until he had his final incarnation as an animal in this time period in the year 2016. And now he has moved on to be, to incarnate in human form.
Wow. It is heavy to consider that even though you do believe in the true path, it's like energy. Like once it's put out there, it has to be dealt with. It has to go somewhere. So yeah, your actions have to be accounted for.
Yeah. And then you have also this concept, Tiffany, in Judaism especially, and Islam, of people that are not real people. People that are animals.
Okay.
Sometimes they refer to them as goyim. Sometimes they refer to them as maskh in human form. And this is speaking about people who, even though they're in human bodies, their behavior and their consciousness is at the same level as animals, or rather they are animals that are going to, people that are going to be animals. Yeah. Or animals that have now reincarnated recently into human form.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's many narrations where the Ahl Bayt alayhim salam, for example, in the Hafta Sharif, Imam Sadiq takes Al-Mufaddal ibn Umar to the Kaaba, and Mufaddal ibn Umar is admiring all of the pilgrims as they're circumambulating the Kaaba, and they're saying, Labbaik Allahumma labbaik, labbaik la sharika laka labbaik. And Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, kind of dismisses his praise and says, that it's nothing but a bunch of noise. And he says, what are you talking about? And Imam Sadiq wipes over his eyes, and Mufaddal ibn Umar glances at the Kaaba, and it is there where he sees the reality of those pilgrims that are circling the Kaaba, and he sees them as apes and bears and pig and bats and all kinds of creatures that are walking around, and he's shocked and he's terrified. And Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, then wipes his hand over him again, restores his eyesight, and tells him that, most of the human race, are but animals, people that are going back to animal form, or their consciousness is operating at that. And so therefore that's what they are in reality, regardless of what body they inhabit today. This is what they are, and that is what they will become, and that is what they are from. And in another place in Al-Hafta Sharif, there was an incident where the Imam is standing with some people, and they kind of are speaking about a particular individual whom the Imam says that, just today he's working as a carpenter, but just the other day he was a woodpecker, or in his previous incarnation, or a rooster that was, making noise.
Okay.
And
wow.
Yeah. And so you have animals that can become human. And some of the examples of those animals that end up ended up becoming human in the past is like the donkey of Balaam ibn Ba'ura that refused to move forward and obeyed the angel when Balaam was trying to lead him to send down the curses, upon Moses. You have the dog of the 7 sleepers, the ant of Solomon. You had a particular wolf that ate the son of a tyrant police officer who used to basically, terrorize the believers. And so the wolf, by attacking and eating his son and making that tyrant police officer sad and depressed, God rewarded him and, turned him into a human. And then he eventually goes into paradise. You have the whale of Jonah, also same case. And so all of these, the animals that do good, or serve mankind in one way, shape, or form, they can eventually end up in paradise. So I know a lot of people, they wonder, will my pet be in paradise? It depends, really. Not all pets will be in paradise. Some pets will. But what we do know is that any pet that goes into paradise will go into paradise in an honored form, and that honored form is a human form and not an animal form. Nothing gets into paradise crawling on all fours.
Okay.
So
they have to go through good deeds and then earn the right of becoming a human and then reach the rank of paradise. Yeah,
because nobody can get into paradise, Tiffany, except if God is their king and their ruler. They have to believe in the supremacy of God.
Yes.
That's the whole reason why Iblis got kicked out. And the animal forms, like the reason that's given for the creation of animal bodies in the first place, is to be the bodies that all of those who refuse the supremacy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can inhabit.
Okay.
Do you understand?
Yes, I understand.
So that's what it all came down to. In the very beginning, God creates Adam, okay? And he basically tells the angels to prostrate to him. All of the angels prostrate, except for Iblis and Iblis's children. Iblis's people.
Yes.
Those who refused to prostrate to Adam, God made bodies for. And those bodies are deformed, monstrous, bodies that are meant for suffering, and they live horrific, horrible lives. Imagine the life as an animal. Very bad. Extremely bad. Even animals that are free and in the forest and in the woods, they don't enjoy it. No. Deer that are running around afraid of being shot or killed or attacked or snatched, living in an environment where there's dangers that are around you all of the time. Animals don't enjoy being animals. Animals wish to be human beings.
Yeah. Okay. So the human being, like the point of this human vessel is, it all goes back to the acknowledging the supremacy of God and worshiping the one who got his children. It's for the children of
Adam. Okay. Who recognize Adam.
Okay, so that's truly man, Adam.
That's a truly man. That's an Adam. An Adamite is somebody who recognizes God's authority, somebody whom uses their vessel to be recipient of the Holy Spirit, somebody who uses the vessel to become a recipient of the Holy Spirit, or, to become to elevate, above the angels.
Okay.
Because Adam was above the angels, hence the angels had to prostrate to him.
Okay.
And the narrations state that God made the angels, in such a way that desire, lust, these types of things are absent from them. Yeah. And he gave them intellect, and he made animals in such a way that these vessels, there is no intellect in them. It's only lust and desires.
Okay.
And human beings, he places in them both intellect and also lust and desire. So whatever human, their intellect and their spirituality overcomes their lusts and their base desires, they are above the angels and better than them. Okay?
Wow, that's beautiful.
And whoever it is that their lust and desires overcomes their intellect and their spirit, then those are beneath the animals. They're worse than them. Yeah. And for that reason, all of those who experience life as a human being and their lust and their desires, when in the end, then they go on to being, animals and bodies that are appropriate for them, that are actually a gift for them, because now, they were actually worse than the animals. And people who, who their spirit and their intellect overcomes their animal nature, they will go on to live like the angels in the heaven above. And in actuality, they will end up ruling over the angels like Adam did before.
Okay. Well, it's such an amazing topic to think about. It's extremely deep and it's heavy at times, but it's also important to contemplate deeply on your own actions and think about how what it really means to be a human being. And are we really living up to our potential? Are we doing what our vessel was created for? Are we acknowledging the supremacy of God? And I think that it's a wake-up call for many people.
Yeah. Animals can't obey God. Animals can't uphold God's commandments. Animals don't have the ability to follow an imam or to submit to God's vicegerent. Human beings do.
Yeah.
And that's what the vessel was made for. It was made to recognize God's veil in creation. And we'll stop at that point. Thank you so much, Tiffany, for joining me.
Thank you so much for everything you've taught me today.
God bless you.
God bless you.